as you discover the kinds of projects you're drawn to. So these are my primary desktop tools. These are silicone clay shapers in size 0 in different profiles for shaping clay. They have other applications like applying paste and smoothing joints. These come in larger sizes, which I also use occasionally. These tiny brushes on the left are for adding clay paste and refining work. You can see I have modified them to make them even thinner. And the flat brush I use for dusting off work to prepare it for firing, especially for removing dust from fire-safe stones. This is my most used needle tool as it has that uniform shank thickness and a really fine point. I use this for making pilot holes, leveling flat backs, and more. I use my X-Acto for cutting wet clay, applying paste to projects, and in place of a palette knife for massaging dry clay back to life. Of course, we use caution and good judgment whenever we're using a blade, so you would only use this if you are comfortable doing so. If not, there are other tools to do all of those same jobs. This is a round needle file. It's one from a set. I find I use the round file most of all for cleaning up the insides of bales or similar small round spaces. The other files in the set come in a variety of angles. This is a tiny drill bit held in a pin vise. It can be opened to switch out the bit when it becomes used or dull, which looks like this. This is great for drilling jump ring holes in pendants or elsewhere. The drill bit can be used separately. The pin vise functions as a very useful handle, and it can double as an X-Acto blade handle. This is my preferred rolling pin. The clear acrylic helps us to see what's happening to the clay beneath as we roll. The tissue blade is incredibly sharp, so we're always very careful when handling it. It's great for cutting continuous straight or slightly curved lines. These are rolling slats for creating an even thickness as you roll out your clay. We'll talk about these more in a minute. This is a clay scraper, which has a lot of uses from moving pieces to bladeless cutting, which can help preserve your cutting surfaces. And this is an agate burnisher. It's used both before and after firing to give the silver a reflective finish by pressing it smooth, and can create a better post-fire surface for polishing. Let's look more closely at our rolling slats. Each pair of matching colors is a set, and they go like this on either side of our clay, so that when we put our imaginary clay here and then roll it out, it's going to be even. And this one is going to be a thinner slab because each color represents a different depth. Slat thickness is named for how many playing cards they are deep. Slats are convenient, but cards serve the very same purpose at a fraction of the cost. These are a second tier of small tools that I would consider optional but keep in close reach myself, so I will review them too. Fine point tweezers come in handy for arranging tiny elements, smaller than what my fingertips can manage. These are so sharp they come with a protective cap. Little scissors have many studio uses. A 2-system ruler in plastic so it doesn't scratch your unfired clay. If you find straws useful for rolling bales or drying other round elements, you might start collecting them as you're out and about. And a ball stylus in different sizes can be helpful for sculpting clay. One of the beautiful things about all of these tools is they fit like this in my primary tools jar, right in front of me on the desk. This is a simple and practical storage system, and I think it also illustrates the condensed nature of the shaping necessities, which is something I continue to love about the scale of working with silver clay. Now the essentials that don't fit in my tool jar. This is my favorite work surface. It's Teflon coated, non-stick, and on little legs so I can easily move it around my desk. I stage most of my larger projects here. These tough cards are a mini version of the same thing. I don't ever slice a blade along these surfaces because they are easily damaged, and then the scratches would come through into my work. So instead, when I need to cut, I use Teflon sheet, which comes in a roll like this, and I can cut pieces to use as needed. This is a really handy work surface. I also use these to collect scrap, as I'm working. They can be washed. And if I cut on them and they are damaged, it's no big loss. A small humidifier may be one of the most valuable additions you can make to your studio. It can make a significant difference in slowing down the rate at which your clay dries out while you're using it. Dry air pulls moisture out of your clay. Humidified air slows that process. This is an acrylic board, and like with the rolling pin, the brilliance of this tool is that you can see the clay as you're rolling it or pressing it, so you have full control over the result without having to stop and check. As I use the board, you'll hear me refer to it as both a roller and a press. This is a clay dryer. I think it's an incredibly valuable tool. They are relatively low cost, and the benefits are that it's compact and can sit right in front of you to help expedite the drying of your clay. Many methods can be used to speed up the drying of clay. Some people use a low setting on their oven, a food dehydrator, or a hair dryer. And while all of those options will do the job, I like to have the dryer right in front of me on the desk, in part because I know the further I move pieces around, the more likely it is that something might break. There are many different options for sanding and smoothing silver clay. These are 2 examples. At left is a set of sanding pads. These are the ones I use every day. At right is a nail buffing block, which works through the same concept. Not pictured but similar include sanding papers or sanding sticks designed for clay, all of which can be used both before and after firing. Let's talk about how these tiered systems work. Multi-part sanding systems are designed to go in a sequence from largest grit to smallest grit. The largest grit takes the scratches out of your work, the next one down removes the scratches of the first, and the last removes the scratches of the previous, leaving you with a smooth and reflective surface. I prefer these sanding pads because the pad gives me something to grip while I work, and they're versatile. I can hold them like this, or rest it on the desk and press the piece against it like this, or hold it like this, depending on what I'm trying to do. The nail buff works under the same concept of descending grit. When we read that it says to use them in order, gray, green, white, we know why, and I can feel the gray is scratchy and the white is very soft. These buffs aren't flexible, as you see, but that might be an asset to someone who finds holding them to be easier than holding something with less structure. Of course, you know that some of these things I'm showing you are brand new, and they will immediately look like this upon use, and that's okay. Supplies are for using. When the sanders are too large, these micro smoothers are for very fine finishing work, as they can be wetted and used to make a paste on unfired or greenware clay to heal inconsistencies in tight spaces, though I do not consider them essential. These 3 bottles are essential, and they have quite different purposes. One is how I prep my hands, one is how I prep my tools, and the last one is how I care for my clay. First, the lotion. You do not need to use this brand. Instead, use your favorite lightweight lotion. Right when I sit to work, I put a thin layer on my fingers. This creates a moisture barrier on my skin so it doesn't pull the moisture out of the clay. I also wash my hands often and reapply lotion after, just to take care of my skin. Cool Slip is my favorite nonstick agent that I apply to many of my tools before using them. Too much of it will gunk up the clay, and the sprayer delivers far more than I want, so I open it to take out a few drops at a time. Of course, before putting anything on your skin, it's wise to do a spot check for yourself, but this is one of the many ways I spread this evenly around in thin layers. We're going to talk more about this in a few minutes. This mister contains distilled water, and I use it whenever I've had a piece of clay or scraps sitting on my desk for a few minutes. I hold it 8 to 10 inches away and spritz the clay before returning the clay to the pack. Using distilled water is optional and less important if you will be using your clay quickly, but I strongly advise you, if you're going to be using your clay over an extended period of time, to use distilled as it prevents the growth of mold. And finally, I have store-bought silver paste on the tools list because it's a better quality than I've ever been able to make myself.